Clara Prescott's knees hit the wooden boardwalk as cruel laughter erupted through Copper Creek's Independence Day celebration. Her basket of hand-sewn flags scattered into the mud. 29 years of mockery compressed into this single moment. The seamstress who stitched wedding dreams for every bride in town, but would never wear one herself. Then Boots appeared before her, a rough hand extended downward. She looked up into eyes gray as storm clouds. "Ma'am." His voice carried no pity, only steadiness. "You gonna take my hand, or you gonna let them win? Want to see where Clara's story goes? Watch until the very end. Hit that subscribe button and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story of second chances travels. Now let's begin." The morning Clara Ruth Prescott's life changed started like every other, with her fingers bleeding from needle pricks before the sun cleared the Wyoming mountains. She'd been working since 4, finishing the Henderson wedding dress that needed to be perfect by noon. Her mother's shop sat quiet in the pre-dawn darkness, the only sound her own breathing and the soft whisper of silk through her hands. "Clara," her mother's voice came from the doorway. "You've been at it all night again." "Almost done, Mama." Ruth Prescott crossed to the workbench, her eyes taking in her daughter's hunched shoulders, the half-empty coffee cup, the pile of fabric scraps. "The Hendersons don't deserve this much of you. They're paying customers. They're also the same folks who didn't invite you to the engagement party." Ruth's hand settled on Clara's shoulder. "You notice that? You make the dress, but you don't get to celebrate the love." Clara's needle paused. "I noticed." "Then why do you keep—" "Because this is what I do, Mama." Clara's voice came sharper than she intended. "This is all I have. Let me have it." The silence stretched between them, heavy with words neither would say. Finally, Ruth sighed. "The Independence Day celebration starts at noon. You're coming." "I have work." "You have a life, whether you choose to live it or not." Ruth moved toward the kitchen. "I'll make breakfast. You'll eat. Then we'll go watch the fireworks like normal folks." Normal folks. Clara whispered the words after her mother left, testing their weight. She hadn't felt normal since she was 19, since Harold Finch had looked at her across his father's bank lobby and smiled like she was worth something. She'd believed that smile for 3 months. Believed the secret meetings, the whispered promises, the way he'd held her hand behind the mercantile and called her beautiful. Then she'd overheard him collecting his winnings from Tom Crawford at the saloon. "Told you I could keep it going a month," Harold had laughed. Fat Clara actually thought someone like me would want someone like her. Easiest $20 I ever made. 10 years hadn't dulled that particular blade. Clara finished the last stitch on the Henderson dress at 11, wrapped it in muslin, and carried it across town with her head down and her pace quick. She'd learned to navigate Copper Creek like a soldier crossing hostile territory, timing her errands to avoid the worst gossips, choosing routes that kept her invisible. "Clara! Clara Prescott!" She froze. Martha Price stood outside the general store, her voice carrying that false sweetness that always preceded cruelty. "My goodness, child, you're sweating like a mule in August. That dress must be heavy for you." Translation: You're too fat to carry simple packages without struggling. "Morning, Mrs. Price." Clara kept walking. "Wait now, I wanted to ask you something." Martha fell into step beside her, a shark scenting blood. "You're coming to the celebration today, aren't you? My nephew's visiting from Cheyenne." Lovely boy, though he's had some troubles. Gambling, mostly. Can't seem to find a nice girl willing to overlook his problems. The implication was clear. Desperate women like Clara couldn't be choosy. "That's kind, but I'll be working." "Working? On Independence Day?" Martha's smile sharpened. "Well, I suppose someone has to keep busy. Can't all have families to celebrate with." Clara's grip tightened on the dress. "The Hendersons are expecting their delivery." "Of course they are. You run along now." Martha patted her arm with false sympathy. And Clara? Maybe try smiling more. Men like a pleasant face, even if the rest isn't quite, well, you understand. Clara understood perfectly. She delivered the dress to Mrs. Henderson, who inspected every seam twice and still managed to find fault with the hem. She accepted payment that was $10 less than agreed, because arguing would only make things worse. She walked home through back alleys, avoiding the crowds already gathering for the celebration. But her mother was waiting at the door with her best shawl and an expression that brooked no argument. "We're going." "Mama." Ruth Prescott didn't raise a coward. Her mother's chin lifted. "Your father faced down claim jumpers and copper barons. You can face a bunch of small-minded gossips." "It's not the same, isn't it?" Ruth took her daughter's face in her hands. "They want you to hide. They want you to feel ashamed of existing. Don't give them the satisfaction." Clara looked into her mother's eyes, saw the fierce love there, and felt something crack in her chest. 1 hour. 2. 1.5. Ruth smiled. "I'll take it." The celebration had transformed Copper Creek's Main Street into something almost magical. Red, white, and blue bunting hung from every storefront. Children raced between adults' legs, waving sparklers. The smell of roasted corn and apple pie filled the air. Clara stayed close to her mother, clutching a basket of small American flags she'd sewn as donations for the children. At least if her hands were busy, she'd have something to do besides stand awkwardly at the edges. "Miss Prescott," Sheriff Emmett Walker tipped his hat as he passed. "Fine day for a celebration." "Yes, sir." Clara managed a small smile. The sheriff had always been kind to her, one of the few. "Those flags for the young'uns?" "Yes, sir." "That's real generous of you." He nodded approvingly. "Real generous." He moved on, and Clara felt a small warmth bloom in her chest. Maybe this wouldn't be so terrible. Maybe... Well, well, look who decided to show her face. The warmth died. Harold Finch stood 10 feet away, surrounded by his usual crowd of sycophants. He'd grown thicker since the days when he'd pretended to love her, prosperity settling around his middle and in the satisfied set of his mouth. His wife, Sarah, hung on his arm, pretty and petite, and everything Clara wasn't. "Happy Independence Day, Clara." Harold's voice carried the false friendliness of a man who knew he held all the cards. "Didn't expect to see you out among decent folks." "Leave her alone, Harold." Ruth stepped forward, but Clara caught her arm. "It's fine, Mama." "It most certainly is not." "Ladies, ladies!" Harold raised his hands in mock surrender. "I'm just being neighborly. Can't a man greet an old friend?" "We were never friends." Clara's voice came quiet but steady. "No?" Harold's smile turned ugly. "Then what were we, Clara? What do you call 3 months of sneaking around, letting me—" "Harold," Sarah's sharp voice cut through, "we should find the children." For a moment, something flickered across Harold's face. Shame, maybe, or fear of his wife's reaction. Then it hardened into the cruelty Clara knew so well. "You're right, darling. No point wasting time on charity cases." He started to turn away, then paused. "Oh, and Clara, I heard you made the Henderson dress. Martha Price told me you could barely carry it across town. Maybe lay off the apple pies, Though I suppose if you can't find a man, you might as well find comfort somewhere." Laughter rippled through his crowd. Clara stood frozen, the familiar shame washing over her like ice water. Her face burned, her eyes stung, her hand shook around the basket of flags. "Ignore him," Ruth whispered fiercely. "He's nothing. I need some air." Clara pushed through the crowd, not caring where she was going, just needing to be anywhere else. The laughter followed her, real or imagined, she couldn't tell anymore. The bunting blurred. The smells that had seemed pleasant now made her stomach turn. She made it to the edge of the celebration before her foot caught on a loose board. The basket flew from her hands. Her knees hit the wooden boardwalk hard. Flags scattered into the mud. And the laughter that erupted around her was definitely real this time. "Oh my goodness!" Someone's voice dripping with false concern. "Are you all right? That looked like quite a tumble." "Someone help her up! Can she even get up on her own? Poor thing, she must be so embarrassed." Clara stayed down, her palms pressing into the rough wood, her vision swimming with tears she refused to let fall. 29 years. 29 years of being the town's joke, the charity case, the fat seamstress who made beautiful things for other women's beautiful lives. Maybe they were right. Maybe she should just stay down. Stop trying. Accept that this was all she would ever be. Then boots appeared before her. Not fancy boots, working boots, scuffed and dusty, belonging to someone who'd traveled hard and far. A rough hand extended downward. "Ma'am." Clara looked up. The man standing over her was perhaps 45, maybe older. Silver threaded through dark hair that needed cutting. A scar traced down his left cheek, white against weathered skin. But his eyes, gray as storm clouds, gray as mountain granite, held something she didn't expect. Not pity, not amusement, not the cruel assessment she was used to from men. Just steadiness. And a question. "You gonna take my hand?" he said, his voice low and rough like gravel. "Or you gonna let them win?" Clara stared at him. The crowd had gone quiet, watching this unexpected interruption. She could feel their eyes, their judgment, their certainty that she would refuse, would pull away, would prove once again that she wasn't worth helping. She took his hand. His grip was strong, calloused, and he lifted her to her feet like she weighed nothing at all, like her size was simply a fact, not a failing. "You hurt?" he asked. "No, her voice cracked. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." Clara looked down. Her palm was scraped raw from the fall, blood welling up in thin lines. "It's nothing." "It's something." He produced a clean handkerchief from his pocket, plain white cotton, nothing fancy, and wrapped it around her hand with surprising gentleness. "You should clean that proper when you get home." "Thank you." Clara couldn't stop staring at him. "I don't... Who are you?" "Name's Silas Blackwood." He released her hand but didn't step back. "I've got a ranch up past Eagle Ridge. Came down for supplies." "You're the one who lives in the mountains." Clara had heard of him. Everyone had. The hermit rancher who appeared in town 2 or 3 times a year, spoke to no one, and disappeared back into the wilderness. "They say you haven't talked to anyone in 20 years. "They say a lot of things." His eyes swept over the watching crowd, and something in his expression made people suddenly find other places to look. Most of it wrong. "Hey now!" Harold's voice cut through, and Clara felt her stomach drop. "What's going on here? You bothering this lady, stranger?" Silas turned slowly. When he spoke, his voice was mild, but Clara saw Harold take an involuntary step back. "I was helping her up. You got a problem with that?" "I just think it's strange, is all. Man nobody knows putting his hands on one of our townswomen." "Your townswomen?" Silas's voice dropped lower. "Funny. I didn't see any of you rushing to help her. I saw you laughing." The silence that fell was absolute. "Now see here," Harold started. "No." Silas stepped forward, and Clara watched Harold's face go pale. "You see here. I don't know who you are, and I don't care. But I know what I saw. A woman fell. You laughed. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." "You can't talk to me like that. Do you know who my father is? He owns the bank in this town." "Don't care." "I could have you run out of here." "Try it." The two words hung in the air like a challenge. Harold's crowd shifted uncomfortably. No one stepped forward to support him. "Come on!" Sarah tugged at Harold's arm, her face red with embarrassment. "This isn't worth it. Let's go." For a long moment, Harold held Silas's gaze. Then his eyes dropped. "This isn't over," he muttered, but he was already retreating, his crowd scattering like startled chickens. Silas watched them go, then turned back to Clara. His expression had softened, though soften might be too strong a word. Less hard, maybe. Less closed. "You all right?" he asked again. "Yes, Clara realized she was still holding the handkerchief wrapped around her bleeding hand. "Thank you for helping me, for all of that." "Didn't do anything special." "You did." The words came fierce, surprising them both. "You're the first person in this town who's ever stood up for me. The first one who didn't just watch and laugh." Something flickered in Silas's gray eyes. Then this town's got its priorities wrong. Before Clara could respond, her mother appeared at her elbow, breathing hard from pushing through the crowd. "Clara, I saw you fall. I tried to get to you, but—" Ruth stopped, taking in the scene. Her eyes moved from Clara to Silas, to the blood-stained handkerchief. "Who's this?" "Silas Blackwood, ma'am." He touched two fingers to his hat brim, a gesture from another era, courtly and almost gentle. "I was just helping your daughter up." "I saw what you did with Harold Finch." Ruth's voice held a note Clara couldn't quite identify. "That took courage." "Didn't take courage to tell the truth." "In this town, it does." Ruth studied him with the frank assessment of a woman who'd survived hard country alone. "You're the rancher from up past Eagle Ridge." "Yes, ma'am. They say you don't talk to anyone." "They say a lot of things." The ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. "Your daughter mentioned that too." Ruth's eyes moved between them, calculating. Then she nodded, some internal decision made. "Mr. Blackwood, have you eaten today?" Clara's heart stuttered. "Mama!" "It's Independence Day," Ruth continued, ignoring her daughter. "No man should be alone on Independence Day. We've got a pot roast at home that's too big for two people, and I suspect you've got a long ride back to your ranch." Silas was quiet for a moment. Clara watched his expression, saw the wariness there, the careful distance of a man who'd spent years building walls. "I wouldn't want to impose, ma'am." "It's not an imposition. It's an invitation." Ruth's chin lifted. "You helped my daughter when no one else would. Least I can do is feed you a decent meal." Another pause. Then Silas's eyes found Clara's, and she saw the question there. "It's good pot roast," she heard herself say. "Mama's the best cook in Copper Creek." "I don't doubt it." He held her gaze a moment longer. "All right, then. I accept." They walked to the Prescott home through back streets, avoiding the celebration. Ruth led the way, chattering about the weather and the ranch, and asking Silas questions he answered in short, careful phrases. Clara followed behind, her scraped palm throbbing, her mind racing. What was she doing? What was her mother doing? They didn't know this man. He was a stranger, a recluse, someone who'd chosen to live apart from human society for 2 decades. But he'd helped her. He'd stood up to Harold. He'd looked at her like she was worth looking at. "Here we are." Ruth unlocked the front door of the small house attached to the seamstress shop. "It's not much, but it's home." "It's nice." Silas stepped inside, removing his hat. He looked too large for the modest parlor, his presence filling corners that had felt empty for years. "You've got good light for sewing." "You know about sewing?" Clara asked, surprised. "I know about needing good light for detail work." He ran a finger along the edge of a half-finished quilt draped over a chair. "This is fine craftsmanship." "That's Clara's work," Ruth said proudly. Best seamstress in 3 counties. She made the Henderson wedding dress. Took her 2 weeks of 16-hour days. Mama. It's true. Ruth headed for the kitchen. Mr. Blackwood, you sit yourself down. Clara, help me with the food. In the kitchen, Ruth immediately rounded on her daughter. What happened with Harold? She demanded in a whisper. I saw him talking to you before you ran off. Clara looked away. The usual. Clara Ruth Prescott, you tell me. He brought up what happened when I was 19. Made comments about my weight. Told me to lay off the apple pies. Clara's voice went flat. Same as always. Ruth's face hardened. That man is a snake. Always was, always will be. It doesn't matter. It does matter. Ruth gripped her daughter's arms. You are worth 10 of him. 100. And that man out there, did you see the way he looked at Harold? Like he was something scraped off a boot? He was just being decent. Decent is rare enough to be notable. Ruth glanced toward the parlor. And the way he looked at you. Mama, stop. I'm just saying. Please. Clara's voice cracked. Please don't do this. Don't build something up that isn't there. I've had enough humiliation for one day. Ruth's expression softened. All right, baby, all right. She squeezed Clara's arms. Let's just have a nice meal. No expectations, no pressure. Just food and conversation. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. They served dinner on the good china, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, fresh bread, a pie Clara had made that morning. Silas ate with the careful appreciation of someone who'd lived on his own cooking for too long. This is excellent, ma'am, he told Ruth. Haven't had a meal this good in, well, long time. You don't have family, Mr. Blackwood? Ruth asked. Clara saw Silas's hand pause on his fork, just for a moment, just a fraction of a second. Then he continued eating. No, ma'am. Not anymore. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. I'm sorry, Ruth said quietly. I didn't mean to pry. You didn't. Silas set down his fork. It was a long time ago. The silence stretched. Clara found herself wanting to fill it, wanting to say something that would ease the pain she saw flickering in his gray eyes. More pie? She offered. It was inadequate, but it was something. Silas looked at her. For a moment, his expression unguarded, she saw grief there. Old grief, carefully contained, but present nonetheless. Then he smiled, just slightly, just enough to change the weathered landscape of his face. I'd like that, he said. Thank you. After dinner, Silas helped clear the dishes, despite Ruth's protests. Clara found herself standing beside him at the wash basin, drying plates while he washed them with the same careful attention he gave everything. You didn't have to do that today, she said quietly. Do what? Stand up to Harold. Help me up. Come to dinner. She stacked a plate carefully. You could have walked past. Everyone else did. Silas was quiet for a moment, scrubbing a pot that was already clean. When I was young, he said finally, I walked past a lot of things I shouldn't have. Told myself it wasn't my business. Told myself someone else would handle it. He rinsed the pot, set it aside. I don't do that anymore. Why not? He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. Because I learned what happens when good people do nothing. His voice was low, rough with something that might have been old pain. And I decided I didn't want to be that person anymore. Clara didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to respond to this man who'd appeared out of nowhere and treated her like she was worth something. I should go, Silas said, breaking the moment. Long ride back to the ranch. Of course. Clara stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they'd been standing. Thank you. For everything. Silas nodded, drying his hands on a towel. He retrieved his hat from the parlor, said his goodbyes to Ruth, and paused at the door. "Miss Prescott." Clara looked up. "That handkerchief." He nodded toward her bandaged hand. "Keep it. Consider it a promise." "A promise of what?" Something shifted in his expression, something that made her heart trip over itself. "That someone in this world sees you," he said, "and thinks you're worth seeing." Then he was gone, his boots echoing on the boardwalk, disappearing into the summer twilight. Clara stood at the window, watching until she couldn't see him anymore. "Clara?" Her mother's voice came soft from the doorway. "You all right?" "I don't know." Clara touched the handkerchief wrapped around her palm. "I honestly don't know." But something had shifted, something small and fragile and dangerous, something that felt like the first stirring of hope. 3 days passed before Clara found the first gift. She'd been checking the back door of the shop before dawn, same as always, when her foot caught on something. A small bundle, wrapped in brown paper, tied with leather cord. No note, no name. Inside was a thimble case, hand-carved from dark wood, polished smooth as silk, with tiny flowers etched around the edges. The craftsmanship was exquisite, hours of work in every curve and line. Clara's hands trembled as she held it. "What's that?" Her mother appeared in the doorway, coffee cup in hand. "I don't know." Clara turned the case over, searching for any mark of origin. "Someone left it at the back door." Ruth crossed the kitchen, took one look at the gift, and raised an eyebrow. "That's not store-bought." "No. Someone made this, spent real time on it." "I know." Their eyes met. Neither said his name, but they were both thinking it. "Could be anyone," Clara said quickly. "Could be a customer who wanted to thank me for—" "Clara, it doesn't mean anything." "Baby." Ruth's voice gentled. "When's the last time anyone in this town gave you a gift?" Clara couldn't answer, couldn't remember. "That's what I thought." Ruth squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "Don't throw it away before you know what it is." Clara kept the thimble case, tucked it in her apron pocket where she could feel its weight all day. Told herself it meant nothing. Told herself she was being foolish. But her heart didn't believe her. The second gift came 2 days later. A spool of silk thread, in a shade of blue she'd never seen. Deep as twilight, shimmering like starlight. Wrapped in the same brown paper, tied with the same leather cord. The third gift arrived the day after. A small pot of salve that smelled of pine and mountain herbs, with a note in rough handwriting. "For your hands, the needle pricks." He'd noticed her hands, the scars, the calluses, the constant small wounds of her trade. Clara read that note 17 times. "You should write back," Ruth said that evening, watching her daughter trace the words with her fingertip. "Write back to whom? There's no name." "We both know who it is." "We don't know anything." Clara folded the note carefully, tucking it into her pocket with the thimble case. "And even if we did, what would I say? Thank you for noticing I exist? Thank you for treating me like a human being? That's pathetic." "That's honest." Same thing in my experience. But that night, Clara sat at her small desk with a sheet of paper and a pen that shook in her grip. She wrote 3 words, crossed them out. Wrote 5 more, crumpled the paper. Started again. Finally, simply, "The thread is beautiful. I've never seen this color. Thank you. C.P." She left it at the back door before dawn, weighted with a stone against the wind. By noon, it was gone. The next morning brought another gift, a small leather pouch containing buttons carved from antler, each one unique. And another note. "For your work, you make beautiful things." Clara's response. How do you know what I make? His answer, 2 days later. I watched you carry the Henderson dress, saw the care in how you held it. That's not just work, that's love. Something cracked open in Clara's chest. No one had ever called her sewing love before. No one had ever seen it that way. She wrote back, "It's the only language I know how to speak." His response, "Then you're fluent in something most people never learn." The exchanges continued through June's long, hot days. Small gifts appearing at her door. A ribbon of sage green silk. A packet of needles finer than any she could buy in town. Pressed wildflowers from the high meadows. And notes. Always notes. The ravens woke me arguing over a pine nut. Reminded me that even small things are worth fighting for. Summer's coming hard this year. Make sure you drink enough water. I read a book once that said hands tell stories. Yours must tell a library. Clara kept every note pressed between the pages of her mother's Bible. Read them so many times, the paper grew soft as cloth. Found herself smiling at odd moments, thinking of words written by a man she'd spoken to for barely an hour. "You're different," Ruth observed one morning. "Lighter." "I'm the same." "You hummed yesterday, while sewing. I haven't heard you hum since you were 19. Clara's needle paused. "Did I?" "Beautiful dreamer, your father's favorite." The mention of her father, dead 15 years now, crushed in a mind collapse, should have brought sadness. Instead, Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest. "Maybe I'm just happy the Henderson wedding is over." "Maybe," Ruth's eyes twinkled. "Or maybe someone's making you happy." "Mama, I'm not pushing, just observing." Ruth returned to her own sewing. "Whatever this is, whoever it is, don't let fear steal it from you." But fear was exactly what Clara felt when she stepped outside that afternoon and found Martha Price waiting on the boardwalk. "Clara, just the person I wanted to see." Martha's smile held all the warmth of a rattlesnake. "I've been hearing the most interesting things." Clara's stomach dropped. "I'm sure you have." "People have noticed someone leaving packages at your back door. Before dawn, when respectable folks are still in bed." Martha leaned closer. "Now, I'm not one to spread rumors, but some are saying it's that hermit from the mountains. The one who made such a scene at the celebration. Mr. Blackwood helped me when I fell, that's all." "Is it?" Martha's eyes glittered. "Because Tom Crawford says he saw him riding toward town 3 times this week." 3 times, Clara. "A man who hasn't come down from that mountain more than twice a year since before you were born." Clara's heart hammered. "I wouldn't know anything about that." "Wouldn't you?" Martha circled her slowly, a predator assessing prey. "You know what people are saying, don't you? They're saying that crazy hermit has taken a shine to our poor Clara. That he's courting her like she's actually worth courting." The words hit like slaps. Clara kept her face still, but inside, something started to crumble. "They're also saying," Martha continued, "that a woman would have to be mighty desperate to encourage that kind of attention. A woman who knows no decent man would look at her twice. A woman who's willing to settle for a madman because she can't do any better." "Are you finished?" "I'm just concerned, dear." Martha's false sympathy oozed like honey over poison. "A man like that, living alone all those years, who knows what's wrong with him, what he might do? A respectable woman would shut that down immediately. But then again," she let the implication hang, "I suppose you're not really respectable, are you? Not since Harold." Clara's vision went red. "Get away from me." "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me." Clara's voice shook, but not with fear, with fury. "Get away from me, Martha Price. Take your poison and your gossip and your twisted little mind somewhere else." Martha's jaw dropped. "How dare you?" "I dare because I'm tired. Clara stepped forward, and for once, Martha stepped back. Tired of being your entertainment. Tired of being this town's punching bag. Tired of letting people like you make me feel worthless because it's easier than fighting back. You're making a scene. Good. Clara's chin lifted. Let them watch. Let them see that fat Clara finally found her voice. You want to spread rumors? Spread this one. I'm done being afraid of you. She turned and walked away, her whole body trembling, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She didn't look back. Didn't stop until she was inside the shop with the door locked behind her. Then she collapsed against the wall and let the tears come. Ruth found her there 10 minutes later, gathered her up without a word, and held her while she cried. I'm proud of you, Ruth whispered. So proud. She's going to tell everyone. She's going to make it worse. Let her. You finally stopped letting them win. Ruth pulled back, cupping Clara's face. That's worth any price. That night, Clara wrote a note that was different from the others. They know. The whole town's going to know. About the gifts, about you coming to town. They're going to make it ugly, make it cruel. I understand if you want to stop. She left it at the back door and didn't sleep, waiting for the answer she was sure would come. The end of this fragile, impossible thing before it had truly begun. At dawn, she found his response. Let them talk. I stopped caring what people think 20 years ago. The only question that matters, do you want me to stop? Clara's hands shook so hard she could barely write. No, I don't want you to stop. His answer came faster than usual, as if he'd been waiting nearby. Then I won't. Not unless you ask me to. Not ever. And underneath, in smaller letters, some things are worth fighting for. You're one of them. Clara pressed the note to her chest and cried again. But these tears were different. These tears felt like hope. The gossip exploded across Copper Creek like wildfire in dry brush. By noon the next day, everyone knew, or thought they knew, about Clara Prescott and the mountain hermit. Opinions divided sharply. The respectable folks sided with Martha Price. Clara was desperate, Silas was dangerous, and the whole thing was scandalous beyond words. But others, the widow Mrs. Chen, the bakers from the edge of town, a few ranchers who'd had dealings with Silas over the years, offered quiet support. He's not crazy, Tom Baker told Clara when she delivered a mended shirt. Private, yes. But I've seen how he treats his horses. A man who's gentle with animals isn't the monster they're making him out to be. Thank you, Clara managed. Don't thank me. Just don't let them steal this from you. Baker's weathered face creased with something like sympathy. You deserve good things, Miss Prescott. Same as anyone. It was such a simple statement, such an obvious truth. But Clara had so rarely heard it that she had to look away to hide her tears. The gifts continued. A comb carved from cedar, a jar of mountain honey, a feather from some bird she didn't recognize. And the notes grew longer, more personal. I had a nightmare last night, first time in years. I dreamed I came down the mountain and you were gone, married to someone else, living a life that had no room for me. I woke up shaking. Clara's response. I'm not going anywhere. This town has tried to drive me out for 29 years. It hasn't worked yet. His answer. Good, because I'm finding I don't much like the idea of a world without you in it. She read that line until her eyes burned, until the words were carved into her memory, like his carvings on wood. Then Harold Finch cornered her at the mercantile. I see you found yourself a man. Harold blocked her path, his bulk filling the narrow aisle between flour sacks and fabric bolts. Or at least, found something that passes for one. Excuse me. Clara tried to step around him. He moved with her. What's the matter, Clara? Not going to stand and chat with an old friend? We were never friends. No, we were more than friends, weren't we? His voice dropped to that intimate murmur that had once made her heart flutter. Now, it made her skin crawl. I remember how you used to look at me, like I was the answer to all your prayers. I was 19 and stupid. You were 19 and easy, Harold smiled, showing teeth. And desperate, just like you are now. Did you really think nobody would notice you throwing yourself at the first man who showed you an ounce of attention? Clara's hands curled into fists. Mr. Blackwood has shown me more respect in 3 weeks than you showed me in 3 months. Respect, Harold laughed. Is that what you're calling it? Sweetheart, a man doesn't leave secret gifts unless he wants something. And we both know what he wants. You don't know anything about him. I know he's been living alone in the mountains for 20 years. I know no normal person does that. I know that whatever's wrong with him is going to come out eventually, and you'll be the one who pays for it. Harold leaned closer. I'm trying to help you, Clara. Save you from yourself. You're trying to make yourself feel better. Clara didn't back away. Because it kills you, doesn't it? That someone actually wants me? That someone looks at me and sees something worth wanting? It was easier when I was alone, when I proved you right. Something ugly flickered in Harold's eyes. Watch yourself. No, you watch yourself. Clara's voice carried further than she intended. People were turning to look. I'm done being your victim. I'm done being this town's joke, and I'm done letting you pretend you did anything but try to destroy me. You ungrateful! Step away from her. The voice came from the mercantile entrance. Low, rough, unmistakable. Silas Blackwood stood in the doorway, his frame blocking the light. He wasn't moving fast, wasn't making threats, but something in his stillness was more dangerous than any violent gesture. This is a private conversation, Harold said, but his voice had lost its edge. Didn't look private. Silas walked forward, each step deliberate. Looked like you were backing a woman into a corner. Where I come from, that's called cowardice. How dare you? How dare I what? Call it like I see it? Silas stopped 3 feet from Harold. This close, the difference between them was stark. Harold's soft prosperity against Silas's lean hardness, earned through years of mountain living. I've heard about you, Finch. Heard what you did to her when she was just a girl. The bet. The humiliation. The way you made sure the whole town knew. Harold's face went white. That was years ago. Cruelty doesn't have an expiration date. Silas's voice dropped to something nearly a whisper, but somehow everyone in the mercantile could hear it. And neither does consequence. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Silas looked at Clara, and his expression shifted, softened. Miss Prescott, you ready to leave? Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. Then let's go. Silas offered his arm, formal, old-fashioned, a gesture of respect that made Clara's eyes sting. She took it, feeling the solid warmth of him through his sleeve. They walked out of the mercantile together, past the staring customers, past Martha Price with her jaw hanging open, past everyone who'd ever made Clara feel small and worthless and alone. On the boardwalk, Silas didn't let go of her arm. You all right? I think so. Clara's voice came out strange. You came. Course I came. But how did you know? I was watching. He said it simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I watch when I can, in case you need someone. Clara stopped walking, turned to face him fully. This man who'd appeared out of nowhere and started caring about her, for reasons she still didn't understand. Why? The question she'd been afraid to ask finally escaped. Why me? Of all the women in all the towns you could have ridden through, why did you stop for me? Silas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that might have been pain. Because when I saw you fall, I saw someone who'd been falling for a long time. Someone the world kept knocking down. And I saw someone who kept getting back up anyway. His gray eyes held hers. That's the rarest kind of strength, Clara. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that just endures. I'm tired of enduring. I know. He reached up, hesitated, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was gentle enough to break her heart. So maybe it's time to start living instead. Clara didn't know who moved first. Maybe they both moved together, drawn by something neither could name. But suddenly, she was in his arms, her face pressed against his chest, his heartbeat thundering beneath her ear. He held her like she was precious, like she was worth holding. "People are watching," she whispered. "Let them. They're going to talk." They were already talking. His arms tightened. The question is whether you're going to let their words write your story, or whether you're going to write it yourself. Clara pulled back just enough to look at him. "And what story do you think this is?" Something shifted in Silas's expression. Something raw and tender and terrifying. The kind that took me 20 years to believe could still happen. His thumb brushed her cheek. The kind where two broken people find each other and decide to be whole together. That's a fairy tale. Maybe. His smile was crooked, almost young. But I've spent 20 years living a tragedy. I'd like to try something different. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely think. This was too fast, too much, too dangerous. Every instinct she'd developed in 29 years of self-protection was screaming at her to run, to hide, to protect herself from the inevitable devastation. But Silas's eyes held hers, and in them she saw her own fear reflected back, along with something else. Hope. Fragile and impossible and undeniable. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Let's try something different." Silas's smile broke across his face like sunrise over the mountains. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Clara found herself smiling back, despite everything. "But you should know, I'm going to be terrible at this." "Good thing I am too." He took her hand, proper now, letting the whole town see. "We'll figure it out together." They walked down Copper Creek's main street hand in hand, and Clara felt the weight of every watching eye, every whispered comment, every judgment being formed and solidified. But for the first time in her life, she didn't care, because Silas Blackwood was holding her hand like she was worth holding onto. And maybe, just maybe, that was all that mattered. The rest of June passed in a blur of secret meetings and public declarations. Silas started coming to town more openly, making no effort to hide his visits to the Prescott shop. He'd sit in the parlor while Clara worked, reading philosophy books he'd borrowed from the traveling library, occasionally commenting on passages he found interesting. "Listen to this," he said one afternoon. "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." Clara's needle paused. "Who wrote that?" "Camus, French fellow. Probably never set foot in Wyoming." "But he understood it." "He understood something." Silas set the book down. "You're rebelling just by existing, Clara. By refusing to disappear like they want you to. That's more courage than most people show in their whole lives." "It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like stubbornness." "Same thing, sometimes." He stood, crossing to where she sat at her sewing table. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "That dress you're working on." He nodded toward the silk creation taking shape beneath her hands. "Who's it for?" "Jenny Morrison, the sheriff's daughter. She's getting married in September." "It's beautiful." "Thank you." You've never made one for yourself. Silas's voice was quiet. Have you? Clara's hands stilled. I'm a seamstress, not a bride. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Silas was quiet for a moment. Then, would you want to? Someday? Be a bride, I mean. Clara's heart stopped, then started again, twice as fast. Silas, I'm not asking now, not proposing anything. I know it's too soon, too fast, too... He ran a hand through his hair, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. I just want to know if it's something you've thought about, if it's something you'd want, with the right person. Clara looked at this man who'd appeared in her life like a gift she hadn't dared hope for, who'd stood up for her, believed in her, held her hand in front of the whole town. I used to dream about it, she admitted, when I was young, before Harold. I had this picture in my mind of what my wedding dress would look like. Every stitch, every seam, every detail. And after? After, I decided dreams like that weren't for women like me. Clara's voice went soft. I make the dreams for other people now. That's enough. It's not enough. Silas knelt beside her chair, bringing his face level with hers. Clara, it's not enough. You deserve every dream you ever had, and some you haven't thought of yet. You don't know that. I know you. His hand covered hers. I know the way you care for things, for people, even when they don't deserve it. I know the strength it takes to keep getting up every day in a town that wants to keep you down. I know that you're the most beautiful thing I've seen in 20 years of looking at mountains. Silas, I'm not asking for anything. His grip tightened. Not yet. But I need you to know that when I look at you, I see someone worth everything I have to give. And someday, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like the chance to prove it. Clara's eyes burned with tears she couldn't stop. What if I'm never ready? What if I'm too broken? Then we'll be broken together. Silas smiled, and it was the most genuine expression she'd ever seen on his face. I've been broken alone for 20 years. I'd rather be broken with you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Clara wanted to say yes to everything he was offering, wanted to throw caution away and leap into this impossible future he was painting. But fear was an old companion, and it whispered warnings she couldn't ignore. I need time, she said finally. To think, to be sure. Take all the time you need. Silas rose, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I've waited 20 years to feel alive again. I can wait a little longer. He left that evening with another promise to return. Another promise that he wasn't going anywhere. Clara watched from the window until he disappeared into the twilight, then turned to find her mother watching her with knowing eyes. That man loves you, Ruth said quietly. I know. Clara's voice broke on the words. And it terrifies me. Good. Ruth crossed to wrap her arms around her daughter. Love should terrify you a little. Means it's real. That night, Clara dreamed of wedding dresses. Not the ones she made for other women, but one she designed years ago in the secret places of her heart. White silk with pearl buttons, a train that caught the light, sleeves that made her arms look delicate instead of heavy. A dress for a woman who believed she deserved beautiful things. She woke with tears on her cheeks and hope in her chest. And in that moment, Clara Prescott made a decision. She was done being afraid. Clara told Silas about her decision the next morning, found him waiting at the back door before dawn, holding wildflowers he'd picked from the mountain meadows. I want to see your ranch, she said without preamble. I want to see where you live, who you are when no one's watching. Silas went still. The flowers trembled in his grip. Clara, You asked me to take time, to think. I did. She stepped closer, close enough to see the fear flickering in his gray eyes. And I realized that I've been hiding from life for 10 years, letting what Harold did define everything I could and couldn't have. I'm done with that. There are things you don't know about me. Then show me. Clara took his hand. Show me everything. The good parts and the bad parts. Let me decide for myself if I can handle it. Silas was quiet for a long moment. She watched him struggle with something. Old pain, old fear, old guilt she didn't yet understand. All right, he said finally. Tomorrow. I'll come for you at first light. Why not today? Because I need to prepare. His voice roughened. There are things up there I haven't shown anyone in 20 years. Things I need to make peace with before I share them. Clara squeezed his hand. Should I be worried? No. He lifted her fingers to his lips, pressed a kiss against her knuckles. But you should be prepared. The man you think you know, he's only part of who I am. The other part, he trailed off. The other part what? The other part has been dead for 2 decades. Silas met her eyes. I'm hoping you can help me resurrect it. He left before she could respond, riding toward the mountains with the flower still clutched in his hand. Clara watched until he disappeared, her heart hammering with anticipation and fear. What was he hiding? What could be so terrible that he needed a day to prepare? She found out soon enough, but not from Silas. That afternoon, Harold Finch came to the shop. Clara was alone when the bell chimed. Her mother had gone to deliver a mended dress across town, leaving Clara to finish the Morrison wedding gown. She looked up from her sewing, and her blood turned to ice. Get out! Now. Harold closed the door behind him, flipping the sign to closed. That's no way to greet an old friend. We're not friends. We were never friends. Clara stood, putting the sewing table between them. My mother will be back any minute. No, she won't. I saw her heading toward the Patterson place. That's clear across town. Harold smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd cornered his prey. We have time to talk. I have nothing to say to you. But I have plenty to say to you. He moved closer, and Clara backed toward the wall. You've been making me look bad, Clara, standing up to me in public, letting that hermit defend your honor like you have any honor worth defending. Leave. You know what people are saying? They're saying Harold Finch finally got what he deserved. They're saying that fat Clara found herself a man, and now she thinks she's better than everyone. His voice dropped to something ugly. I can't have that. What do you want? I want you to end it. Whatever this thing is with Blackwood. End it. Tell him you made a mistake. Tell him you're not interested. Harold's eyes glittered. And then we go back to the way things were. You stay quiet. Stay invisible. Stay in your place. Clara's hands trembled, but not with fear. With rage. No. Excuse me? I said no. She straightened, meeting his gaze directly. I won't end it. I won't go back. And I won't let you terrorize me anymore. Harold's face darkened. You don't have a choice. I always have a choice. I just forgot that for a while. Clara's voice grew stronger. You want to know what Silas taught me? That I'm worth fighting for. That my existence doesn't require your approval. That the only power you have over me is what I give you. And I'm taking it back. You stupid! Harold lunged forward, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. Clara didn't scream, didn't cower. She grabbed the scissors from her sewing table and pressed them against his throat. Let go of me. Harold's eyes went wide. You wouldn't try me. Clara's hand was steady, her voice cold. I've spent 10 years being afraid of you. 10 years letting you make me feel worthless. That ends now. So either let go or find out exactly how far I'm willing to go. For a long, terrible moment, they stood frozen. Clara could feel Harold's pulse hammering against the scissor blades, could see the sweat breaking out on his forehead. Then he released her arm and stepped back. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, it is. Clara lowered the scissors, but didn't set them down. Get out of my shop. Get out and don't come back. And if you ever touch me again, I'll tell the whole town what you just did. I'll tell them that Harold Finch, pillar of the community, tried to assault a woman in her own place of business. No one would believe you. Maybe not, but they'd wonder. Clara smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. And you can't afford people wondering, can you? Not with your father's reputation to uphold, not with your wife and children to consider. Harold's face contorted with impotent fury. You'll regret this. I don't think I will. Clara opened the shop door. Goodbye, Harold. He left without another word, but Clara saw it in his eyes, a promise of retribution, of consequences, of a war just beginning. She closed the door, locked it, and slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, with scissors still clutched in her white-knuckled hand. Her whole body started shaking. That was how Ruth found her 20 minutes later. Clara, what happened? Why is the door locked? Why are you— Harold was here. Ruth's face went pale. What did he do? He tried to make me end things with Silas. When I refused, he grabbed me. Clara held up her arm, showing the bruises already forming. So I put scissors to his throat. You what? I put scissors to his throat and told him if he ever touched me again, I'd tell everyone. Clara looked up at her mother with eyes that burned. I think I finally understand what Silas meant about rebellion. Ruth stared at her daughter for a long moment. Then she burst out laughing. That's my girl. She pulled Clara into a fierce embrace. That's my father's blood right there. He'd be so proud. He's going to retaliate. Harold. He's not going to let this go. Let him try. Ruth's voice hardened. We've faced worse than Harold Finch and survived. We'll face this too. That evening, Clara wrote Silas a note telling him what happened. Not to worry him, to warn him. His response came before midnight, delivered not to the back door, but to the front, in full view of anyone watching. I'm coming. Tonight. We need to talk. An hour later, he was at her door. Show me your arm. Clara pushed up her sleeve, revealing the finger-shaped bruises. Silas's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went cold and dangerous. I'm going to kill him. No, you're not. Clara, listen to me. She grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. I handled it. I put scissors to his throat and made him back down. I don't need you to avenge me. I need you to be here, with me. That's all. He hurt you. He's been hurting me for 10 years, but tonight, I hurt him back. Clara's voice softened. Don't you see? That's the victory. Not violence, not revenge. Me, finally standing up for myself. Silas closed his eyes, breathing hard. She felt the tension in him, the barely controlled fury that wanted to explode into action. I spent 20 years learning that violence doesn't fix anything, he said finally. And then I saw those bruises, and all I wanted was to make him bleed. But you didn't. But I wanted to. He opened his eyes. That's who I used to be, Clara. That's the part of me I've been trying to bury. The part that answers hurt with hurt. What happened? Clara asked softly. What made you go to the mountains? Silas pulled away, walked to the window. For a long moment he just stood there, staring at nothing. I was a Texas Ranger, he said finally. Started when I was 20. I was good at it, tracking, fighting, bringing men to justice. Maybe too good. Clara waited, not pushing. When I was 25, I met a woman, Abigail. She was a school teacher in a town I was passing through. Sweetest woman I ever knew. Made me want to be better than I was. His voice caught. We got married that spring. Had a daughter the next year. Named her Rosie because she had these pink cheeks, like she was always blushing. Clara's heart clenched. I stayed a ranger because I thought I was protecting them, making the world safer. But the world isn't safe, and I couldn't be everywhere at once. Silas's hands curled into fists. I was tracking a gang of Comancheros, raiders, killers, the worst kind of men. Tracked them for 3 weeks across the territory. Finally caught their trail heading north. He stopped. His shoulders heaved with a breath that sounded like it hurt. I caught them, 200 miles from home, brought them in, turned them over for hanging. His voice went flat. Didn't find out until I got back that they'd sent part of their gang south, to finish off the ranger who'd been hunting them. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth. Abigail died protecting Rosie, shot twice in the chest. Rosie... His voice broke. Rosie was 4 years old. She didn't understand what was happening. Didn't understand why the bad men were hurting her mama. Silas... I buried them in the meadow behind our house. Built markers from Riverstone. And then I went hunting. Something terrible entered his voice. Took me 6 months to find everyone who'd been involved. And when I found them, I didn't bring them in for trial. The silence that followed was absolute. I killed them, Silas said quietly. All of them. Not quickly. Not cleanly. I made them suffer like they made my family suffer. And when it was done, I looked at what I'd become and couldn't stand it. He turned to face her, and Clara saw tears tracking down his weathered face. That's who I am, Clara. That's what I did. I told myself it was justice, but it wasn't. It was murder. And I've spent 20 years in those mountains trying to figure out if I deserve to be alive when they're not. Clara crossed the room, took his face in her hands, let him see that she wasn't afraid, wasn't disgusted, wasn't turning away. You loved them, she said, and someone took them from you. What you did after, it was wrong, yes, but it was human. It was grief turned inside out. How can you? Because I know what it's like to be destroyed by someone else's cruelty. Clara's voice strengthened. I know what it's like to become someone you don't recognize. The difference is, you've spent 20 years trying to be better, to find peace, to become someone worthy of the life they didn't get to live. I'm not worthy. Maybe not. Clara smiled through her own tears. But neither am I. So let's be unworthy together. Silas stared at her like she'd handed him something impossible. Grace, forgiveness, a future he'd stopped believing in. You should run, he whispered. I'm dangerous. I'm broken. I'm mine. Clara pulled him down, pressed her forehead to his. You're mine, Silas Blackwood. And I don't give up what's mine. He kissed her then. Not gentle, not careful, desperate and hungry and full of everything he'd been holding back. Clara kissed him back with equal fervor, letting him feel that she wasn't afraid, wouldn't run, would stand with him through whatever came next. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Silas's eyes held something new, something that looked almost like hope. Tomorrow, he said. Come to the ranch tomorrow. See everything, the cabin, the graves, all of it. And then decide if you still want this. I already know what I want. Humor me. He pressed another kiss to her forehead. Let me show you who I really am, the whole truth. And if you still want me after that, I will. Then we'll talk about the future. He left as quietly as he'd come, disappearing into the night. Clara watched from the window until she couldn't see him anymore, then turned to find her mother standing in the doorway. "You heard?" "I heard." Ruth's face was wet with tears. "That poor man. He thinks he doesn't deserve to be loved. He's wrong." Ruth crossed to her daughter, took her hands. "And I think you're the one who's going to prove it to him." Clara didn't sleep that night. Kept replaying Silas's confession. Kept seeing the pain in his eyes. Kept marveling that he'd trusted her with something so devastating. He'd killed men. Deliberately. Brutally. Without mercy. She should be horrified. Should be reconsidering everything. Instead, she felt a fierce protectiveness. A determination to prove that redemption was possible. That love could heal even the deepest wounds. At first light, Silas appeared at her door with 2 horses. "Ready?" Clara looked at her mother, who nodded with tears in her eyes. "Be careful, both of you." "We will." The ride to the ranch took 3 hours. Clara had never been this far from town, never seen the mountains up close. But she didn't let herself be distracted by the beauty around her. Her focus was on the man riding beside her, the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept scanning for danger. "There's something else," she said as they climbed higher. "Something you haven't told me." Silas glanced at her. "What makes you say that?" "Because you keep looking behind us, like you're expecting someone to follow." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Harold Finch has friends. Powerful friends. And after what happened yesterday, you think he'll try something. I think he can't afford to let you win." Silas's jaw tightened. "A man like that, whose whole identity is built on making others feel small. He'll destroy everything before he admits defeat." "Then we won't let him." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple." Clara reached across, touched his arm. "I'm done being afraid, remember? Whatever he throws at us, we face together." Silas looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. Something shifted in his expression. Wonder, gratitude, love. "You know, when I came down that mountain for supplies, I wasn't expecting to find anything worth living for. And now? Now I'm finding I've got more to lose than I ever imagined." He covered her hand with his. "That terrifies me." "Good," Clara smiled. "Love should terrify you a little." The ranch appeared suddenly through the trees. A sturdy cabin, well-maintained despite the years. A corral with horses. A barn that had seen better days, but still stood solid. And behind it all, a meadow. Silas helped her dismount, then stood holding her hand like he was gathering courage. "This is where I've lived for 20 years. Where I've hidden. Where I've tried to figure out how to keep going when everything that mattered was gone." He took a breath. "And this is where they're buried." He led her to the meadow. 2 stone cairns marked graves that someone had been tending carefully. Wildflowers growing around them, the stones clean and straight. "Abigail Ridge," Silas said quietly. "And Rosie Ridge. My wife. My daughter." Clara knelt beside the smaller grave, touched the flowers someone, Silas, had planted there. "Hello, Rosie," she whispered. "I'm Clara. I hope you don't mind me being here. I just wanted you to know, your daddy's been very brave and very sad. And I'm trying to help him remember how to be happy again." Behind her, Silas made a sound that might have been a sob. Clara stood, turned to face him. "Show me the rest. Show me everything. And then we'll decide what happens next." They spent the afternoon in the cabin. Silas showed her his books, his carvings, the small details of a life lived in solitude. Clara saw the marks on the wall where he'd counted years, saw the worn spots on the chair where he sat every evening, saw the window positioned to catch the sunrise. "You've been so alone," she said. "I chose it. Thought I deserved it." "And now?" Silas took her hands. Now I'm starting to think maybe I deserve something different. Someone different. His voice roughened. Clara, I know it's fast. I know we've only really known each other for a few weeks. But I've spent 20 years dying slowly, and you've made me want to live again. If that's not love, I don't know what is. It's love. Clara stepped closer. I felt it the moment you took my hand in the street. Like I'd been waiting my whole life for someone to see me. And you did. You do. I see you. Silas cupped her face. I see everything. And it's all beautiful. Even the parts that aren't? Especially those. He leaned down, his forehead against hers. Marry me. Clara's breath caught. Silas, not today, not tomorrow. When you're ready, if you're ever ready. But I need you to know that's where I'm heading. That's what I want. A future with you, whatever that looks like. Yes. The word came out before she could think, before doubt could intervene. Yes? Yes. Clara laughed, cried, pulled him into a kiss that said everything words couldn't. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll stay. Yes, to all of it. Silas lifted her off her feet, spinning her around like she weighed nothing, his laughter mixing with hers in the mountain air. They stayed at the cabin until sunset, making plans, dreaming futures, learning each other in ways that felt both new and ancient. Then they rode back toward town, toward reality, toward whatever consequences awaited them. They smelled the smoke before they saw it. Clara's heart seized. No. She kicked her horse into a gallop, Silas right behind her, both of them racing toward the orange glow that lit up Copper Creek's night sky. The shop was on fire. Flames crawled up the walls, consuming the wood, the fabric, the sewing machines, everything Clara and her mother had built over 30 years. People had formed a bucket brigade, but it was too late, too far gone. Mama! Clara screamed, leaping from her horse. Mama! She's safe. Sheriff Walker caught her before she could run toward the flames. She's safe, Clara. She wasn't inside. Where is she? At the baker's place. She's shaken up, but not hurt. Clara sagged with relief, then straightened as fury replaced fear. Who did this? Walker's expression said everything. We found lamp oil around the back, and this. He held up a piece of fabric. Looks like someone's shirt got torn on the fence. Clara took the fabric. Fine cotton. Monogrammed buttons. She'd seen this shirt before, on Harold Finch. He tried to kill us. Her voice came out hollow. He actually tried to kill us. Silas appeared at her side, his face hard as stone. Where is he? Finch? Walker shook his head. Claims he was at home all evening. Wife confirms it. Of course she does. I can't arrest him without proof, Silas. You know that. Then I'll find proof. Don't do anything stupid. Walker gripped Silas's arm. I know what you're thinking, but if you go after him, he tried to burn them alive. Silas's voice was deadly quiet. He tried to take everything from me. Again. And if you kill him, you'll hang. Where does that leave Clara? The words penetrated. Clara saw Silas struggling with the same fury he described the night before, the violence that had consumed him after losing his family. She took his hand. Don't. Clara, I need you alive. I need you free. I need you here, with me, building a future. She squeezed hard. Don't let him take that from us. Don't let him win. Silas closed his eyes. The muscles in his jaw worked. His whole body trembled with the effort of holding back. Then he pulled Clara into his arms and held on like she was the only thing keeping him from drowning. I won't, he said against her hair. I won't let him win. They stood together in the firelight, watching Clara's life burn to the ground. But she didn't feel despair, didn't feel defeated. She felt something stronger, something that had been building since the moment Silas took her hand in the street. Purpose. "We're going to rebuild," she said. "Better than before. And Harold Finch is going to watch us do it, knowing he couldn't destroy us." Silas pulled back, looking at her with something like awe. "You're incredible." "I'm angry." Clara's eyes glittered in the firelight. "And anger, properly directed, can move mountains." She meant every word, and by the time this was over, Harold Finch was going to learn exactly what Clara Prescott was capable of when she stopped being afraid. The ashes were still warm when Clara started planning. "We need lumber," she told Silas the next morning. They'd spent the night at the baker's place, Clara's mother sleeping fitfully in the next room. "And fabric, and sewing machines. I had two, both gone now." "Clara," Silas caught her hands, stilled their restless movement. "It's been 12 hours. You're allowed to grieve." "I can grieve while I work." Her voice cracked, but she didn't let the tears fall. "If I stop moving, I'll fall apart. And I can't afford to fall apart. Not now." "Then we'll move together," Silas pulled her close. "Tell me what you need. I'll make it happen." "I need Harold Finch to pay for what he did." "That's going to take time. Evidence. Proof his wife didn't give him an alibi." "I know." Clara pulled back, met his eyes. "But I also know that the best revenge is living well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to rebuild bigger and better, and he's going to watch every nail go in." By noon, word had spread through Copper Creek about the fire, and something unexpected happened. People started showing up. First came the bakers, with their wagon loaded with salvaged lumber from their own barn expansion. "Won't need all of it," Tom Baker said gruffly. "Might as well go to good use." Then Eleanor Chen arrived, carrying bolts of fabric she'd been storing for a customer who never paid. "Is good silk," she said, pressing them into Clara's hands. "You make something beautiful." Sheriff Walker brought tools. The Morrison family contributed nails and hardware. Even old Mr. Patterson, who'd barely spoken to Clara in years, appeared with a sewing machine that had belonged to his late wife. "She'd have wanted you to have it," he mumbled, not quite meeting Clara's eyes. "Said once that you were the only seamstress in town who understood how fabric should fall." Clara stared at the growing pile of supplies, at the neighbors who'd barely acknowledged her existence, now working side by side to help her rebuild. "I don't understand," she whispered to Silas. "Half these people wouldn't give me the time of day last month." Fire has a way of clarifying things. Silas watched the townspeople with an expression she couldn't read. Makes people remember what matters. Or makes them feel guilty for how they treated me before. Does the reason matter? He turned to face her. "They're here now. That's what counts." Clara wanted to argue, but Ruth appeared at her elbow, her face lined with exhaustion, but her eyes bright. "The Morrison girl is asking about her wedding dress. Wants to know if any of it survived." Clara's heart sank. The Morrison dress, weeks of work, hundreds of delicate stitches, the most beautiful thing she'd ever created. Gone. "I'll have to start over. Tell her I'll have it ready by September, same as promised." "Clara, that's 3 weeks away. You don't even have a shop." "I'll work from Silas's cabin if I have to." Clara squared her shoulders. "Jenny Morrison is getting married, and she's getting the dress I promised her. End of discussion." Ruth looked at her daughter for a long moment, then smiled. "Your father would be so proud." "I hope so," Clara's voice caught. "I really hope so." The rebuilding began the next day. Silas organized the workers with the same efficiency he'd once used tracking outlaws, assigning tasks, solving problems, keeping everyone moving forward. Clara worked alongside them, hammering nails until her hands blistered, refusing to rest until Silas physically carried her away from the worksite. "You're no good to anyone exhausted," he said, setting her down at the baker's kitchen table. "Eat, sleep, then you can save the world tomorrow." "I'm not trying to save the world, just my life." "Same thing from where I'm standing." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'll keep watch tonight. Make sure no one tries anything else." Clara caught his hand before he could leave. "Silas?" "Yeah?" "Thank you. For everything. For staying." Something soft crossed his weathered face. "Where else would I be?" She fell asleep with those words echoing in her mind. 3 days into the rebuilding, Sheriff Walker came by with news that made Clara's blood run cold. Harold's wife recanted. Clara set down her hammer. "What?" "Sarah Finch came to my office this morning. Said she lied about Harold being home the night of the fire. Said he threatened her. Told her he'd take the children if she didn't back him up." "So you can arrest him." "Already did." Walker's expression was grim. "But here's the thing. He's claiming he was elsewhere. Says he has another alibi. One that's going to be harder to crack." "Who?" "His father, Jeremiah Finch, president of the bank, says Harold was with him all evening, discussing business matters." Clara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Jeremiah Finch owned half the town. His word was law in Copper Creek. "So Harold gets away with it?" "I didn't say that." Walker glanced around, lowered his voice. "There's a witness. Someone who saw Harold near your shop that night. Problem is, they're scared to come forward. Scared of what the Finches will do to them." "Who?" "I can't tell you that, but I can tell you they need to see that standing up to Harold won't destroy them. That there are people who'll have their back." Clara understood. "You want me to find them, convince them to testify?" "I want justice served." Walker tipped his hat. "How that happens is between you and your conscience." He left, and Clara stood staring at the half-built frame of her new shop, mind racing. Someone had seen Harold. Someone knew the truth. But they were afraid, and fear was something Clara understood intimately. "I know that look." Silas appeared at her side. "What are you planning?" "I need to find out who saw Harold that night." "Clara." "If there's a witness, we can put him away. Really put him away. Not just for this fire, but for everything he's done." Her hands curled into fists. "I can't let him win. Not after everything." "And if finding this witness puts you in danger—" "Then I'll be in danger." Clara met his eyes. "I've spent my whole life being safe, playing small, staying invisible. Look where it got me. My shop burned down anyway. At least this way, I'm fighting back." Silas was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this together. You don't go anywhere alone until Harold's behind bars for good." "Deal." They started with the people who'd been out that night. Clara talked to everyone she could find. The saloon keeper who'd been closing up, the stable hand who'd been tending horses, the widow, Mrs. Chen, who kept late hours doing laundry. It was Mrs. Chen who finally gave them the lead they needed. "I no see fire start," she said carefully, "but I see man running. After flames begin. Running toward Finch house." "Could you identify him?" "In dark?" Mrs. Chen shook her head. "But I see his coat. Very fine. Blue with brass buttons. Not many coats like that in Copper Creek." Clara's heart hammered. She knew that coat. Had seen Harold wearing it at the Independence Day celebration. "Would you tell the sheriff what you told me?" Mrs. Chen's face tightened with fear. "Finches are powerful. If I speak against them, I'll protect you." The words came from Silas, who'd been standing silent in the doorway. "Whatever it takes. They won't touch you." "How you promise this?" "Because I've got nothing to lose. Except her. Silas nodded toward Clara. And I'll burn down the whole damn world before I let anyone hurt the people she cares about. Something shifted in Mrs. Chen's expression. She looked at Clara, then at Silas, and slowly nodded. I tell Sheriff. Tomorrow. You come with me? We'll be there. Clara took the older woman's hands. Thank you. You're incredibly brave. Not brave, Mrs. Chen smiled sadly. Just tired of being afraid. Clara understood that feeling perfectly. The next morning, they escorted Mrs. Chen to the sheriff's office. Walker took her statement, wrote everything down, then looked up with something like hope in his eyes. This might be enough, combined with Sarah's recanted alibi and the shirt fragment we found. You can arrest him? I can charge him. Trial will be up to Judge Harrison. When? Next circuit court is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Clara thought of the rebuilt shop, the Morrison wedding dress, the new life she was trying to build with ashes still fresh on her hands. We'll be ready. Word of Mrs. Chen's testimony spread fast. By evening, 2 more witnesses had come forward. The stable hand who'd seen Harold leaving town in the direction of the Prescott shop, and a traveling salesman who'd nearly been run down by someone matching Harold's description, racing back toward the Finch mansion. But the witnesses also brought danger. Clara found the first threat the next morning. A note nailed to the door of her half-rebuilt shop. Drop the charges or burn with your building. She showed it to Silas, who went pale with fury. We need to move you somewhere safe. The ranch. No. Clara crumpled the note in her fist. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. That's exactly what they want. Clara, this is serious. They tried to kill you once, and they'll try again, whether I run or not. The only way this ends is with Harold in prison. She grabbed his hands. I need you to trust me. Trust that I know what I'm doing. I trust you. It's them I don't trust. Then stay close, watch my back, but don't ask me to give up. Silas stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her into a fierce embrace. You're the bravest person I've ever known. I'm the most stubborn. There's a difference. No. He pulled back, cupped her face. There really isn't. The threats continued. More notes. Rocks thrown through the windows of the Baker house where Clara was staying. Whispered warnings from townspeople who'd been visited by Jeremiah Finch's associates. But something else was happening too. The more Harold's family tried to intimidate, the more people pushed back. Tom Baker started keeping a shotgun by his door and dared anyone to come near his property. Sheriff Walker assigned a deputy to patrol the area around Clara's construction site. Even Martha Price, who'd spent years making Clara's life miserable, was overheard telling a group of women that this had gone too far, and decent people don't burn down shops. You're becoming a symbol, Silas observed one evening as they sat together on the baker's porch. Whether you meant to or not. A symbol of what? Fighting back, not accepting what's supposed to be your place. He took her hand. This town's been under the Finch family's thumb for a long time. You're showing them it doesn't have to be that way. I just wanted my shop back. Sometimes that's how revolutions start, Silas smiled. One person refusing to accept the unacceptable. The night before the trial, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat in the kitchen, sewing by lamplight, working on the Morrison wedding dress that she'd promised to finish, no matter what. Her fingers moved automatically, muscle memory taking over while her mind raced. Couldn't sleep either? She looked up to find Silas in the doorway, fully dressed despite the late hour. I keep thinking about tomorrow. What if it's not enough? What if he gets away with it? Then we keep fighting. Silas crossed to sit beside her. But I don't think that's going to happen. Too many people have come forward. Too much evidence. His father's powerful. His father's scared. Silas's voice hardened. I've been watching him, The way he moves, the way he talks. That's a man who knows his empire is crumbling. Harold's not just on trial for arson. He's on trial for years of treating this town like his personal playground. Clara set down her sewing. What if something happens to you? To the witnesses? They've already tried. Nothing's going to happen. Silas took her hands. I've got men watching the Chen place, the stable hands boarding house, every witness we've got. And I'm going to be right beside you every second tomorrow. You can't protect everyone. Maybe not, but I can protect you. He lifted her hands to his lips, and that's all that matters to me. Clara felt tears burn behind her eyes. I love you. The words escaped before she could stop them. 3 words she'd never said to anyone since Harold taught her that love was a weapon people used against you. Silas went very still. Clara, I know it's fast. I know we're in the middle of a crisis. But I needed you to know. Her voice broke. Whatever happens tomorrow, I needed you to know that. He pulled her into his arms so fast she gasped, held her so tight she could barely breathe. I love you too. His voice was rough against her hair. I've loved you since the moment you took my hand in that street. Since you looked at me like I was worth looking at. You are worth looking at. So are you. He pulled back, cupped her face. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. And when it's over, I'm marrying you. I don't care if we have to do it in the ashes of your shop, or the meadow behind my cabin. You're going to be my wife. Is that a proposal? That's a promise. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of everything they'd almost lost. I lost one family. I'm not losing another. Clara kissed him back, letting him feel how much she needed him, how grateful she was that he'd walked into her life. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she managed a watery smile. We should probably get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. Probably. But neither of them moved. Clara? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For bringing me back to life. Silas's voice caught. For making me believe I deserved to live again. Clara pressed her forehead to his. Thank you for seeing me, for fighting for me, for being the first person in 20 years who thought I was worth fighting for. They stayed like that until the first light of dawn crept through the windows, holding on to each other, drawing strength for the battle ahead. The trial began at 10 o'clock. The courthouse was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls, spilling out into the street. Clara had never seen so many faces, all turned toward the raised platform where Judge Harrison would decide Harold Finch's fate. Harold sat at the defendant's table, his face pale but defiant. His father sat directly behind him, Jeremiah's expression carved from stone. Clara took her seat in the front row, Silas on one side, her mother on the other. Their hands found each other in the chaos. All rise. Judge Harrison entered, a severe man with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen everything frontier justice had to offer. This court is now in session. The Territory of Wyoming versus Harold James Finch, on charges of arson, attempted murder, and terroristic threats. Clara's heart hammered as the prosecutor, a young man named Davis, who'd ridden in from Cheyenne, began laying out the evidence. The shirt fragment, the lamp oil, Sarah Finch's recanted alibi, Mrs. Chen's testimony about the man in the blue coat, the stable hand's sighting, the salesman's near collision. One by one, the witnesses took the stand. One by one, they told their stories, their voices trembling but determined. And one by one, the defense attorney, paid for by Jeremiah Finch, tried to tear them apart. Isn't it true that you owe money to the Prescott family? Isn't it true that you've had disputes with my client in the past? Isn't it true that you couldn't clearly see the man's face? Each attack was met with the same steady response. I know what I saw. Then it was Clara's turn. She walked to the witness stand, her legs steady despite the terror coursing through her, took the oath, sat down facing the crowd, facing Harold, whose eyes burned with hatred. Miss Prescott, the prosecutor began, can you tell us about your relationship with the defendant? Clara took a breath. When I was 19 years old, Harold Finch pretended to court me as part of a bet with his friends. For 3 months, he made me believe he loved me. Then I overheard him collecting his winnings and learned the whole thing had been a joke. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. And since then? Since then, Harold has made my life miserable at every opportunity. Public humiliation, cruel comments about my appearance, blocking my business dealings when he could. Clara's voice strengthened. On the night of the Independence Day celebration, he cornered me and told me to end things with Mr. Blackwood or face consequences. And did you end things? No. What happened next? Clara described the confrontation in her shop, the grabbed arm, the scissors, Harold's retreat and his parting threat. He said, "This isn't over," she finished. 3 days later, my shop was on fire. The defense attorney rose for cross-examination, his smile predatory. Miss Prescott, isn't it true that you have a personal grudge against my client? I have a personal grudge against anyone who tries to burn me alive. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The attorney's smile faltered. You claim my client grabbed you, yet there were no witnesses. There were bruises. Clara pushed up her sleeve, revealing the faded marks. Would you like to see? That proves nothing. You could have. I could have what? Bruised myself? Set fire to my own shop? Destroyed everything I'd spent 30 years building? Clara's voice rose. Your client is a bully and a coward who's never faced consequences for his cruelty. That ends today. Objection. The witness is telling the truth. Judge Harrison's voice cut through. And this court will hear it. Continue, Miss Prescott. Clara told the rest of the story. The fire, the witnesses who'd come forward, the threats that followed. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. The prosecutor rose for one final question. Miss Prescott, what do you want from these proceedings? Clara looked at Harold, looked at his father, looked at all the faces that had watched her suffer for years. I want justice, she said. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the chance to live my life without fear, to build something without having it torn down, to love someone without being punished for it. She paused, her eyes finding Silas in the crowd. I want what everyone wants. To be seen, to be valued, to matter. Her voice cracked but didn't break. Harold Finch tried to take that from me. I'm asking this court not to let him succeed. The closing arguments were brief. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, Clara gripped Silas's hand so hard she thought she might break it. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of arson, how do you find? Guilty. Clara's breath caught. On the charge of attempted murder, how do you find? Guilty. Tears streamed down her face. On the charge of terroristic threats, how do you find? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. People cheering, crying, embracing each other. Harold sat frozen, his face white with shock. His father had already risen, pushing toward the exit. Judge Harrison's gavel cracked through the chaos. Harold James Finch, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in the territorial prison. May God have mercy on your soul. Deputies moved forward to take Harold away. As they led him past Clara, he stopped, straining against their grip. This isn't over, he hissed. You think you've won? Your father can't help you anymore. Clara stood, meeting his gaze without flinching. And neither can anyone else. You're finally going to face consequences, Harold. Just like you made me face consequences for being foolish enough to believe in you. You'll regret this. No. Clara smiled, and it was radiant. I don't think I will. They dragged him away, still shouting threats that no one was listening to anymore. Silas wrapped his arms around Clara, lifting her off her feet. You did it. We did it. She pulled back to look at him, laughing and crying at once. All of us, together. Ruth appeared, her face wet with tears. My brave girl. My beautiful, brave girl. Then the others surrounded them. The Bakers, Mrs. Chen, Sheriff Walker, all the people who'd stood with them when it mattered. Hugging, congratulating, celebrating a victory that belonged to everyone who'd ever been made to feel small by Harold Finch and his family. Later that evening, as the sun set over Copper Creek, Clara stood before the frame of her new shop. It was half finished, raw lumber and promise, but it was hers. Silas came to stand beside her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about what I said in court, about wanting to be seen, to matter. She leaned into him. I spent so many years believing I didn't deserve that women like me, fat, plain, invisible, we weren't allowed to want big things. And now? Clara turned to face him, this man who'd taught her to fight for herself. Now I think everyone deserves big things, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. Silas pulled her close. Starting with a wedding? Starting with a wedding, Clara smiled. But Silas, I want to make my own dress. Of course you do. The one I designed when I was young, before Harold, before I learned to stop dreaming. Then that's the dress you'll wear. Silas kissed her forehead. Whatever you want, whatever you dream, that's what we're building. Clara looked at her half-finished shop, at the man holding her, at the future stretching bright and possible before them. She had lost everything. And somehow, impossibly, she had gained so much more. Clara started work on her wedding dress the morning after the trial. She'd kept the design in her head for 10 years, every stitch, every seam, every detail she'd dreamed of before Harold taught her to stop dreaming. Now, sitting in the half-finished shop with fabric spread across her lap, she finally let herself believe it could be real. You're sure about the silk? Ruth asked, watching her daughter cut the first pieces. It's expensive. We could use cotton, save the money for... I've made wedding dresses for every woman in this town. Clara's scissors moved with practiced precision. Beautiful dresses, expensive dresses, dresses that cost more than we earn in a month. Just once, I want to make something beautiful for myself. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, her eyes bright with tears. Your father proposed to me with a ring made from copper wire. Said he'd buy me a real one when the mine paid out. She laughed softly. The mine never paid out, but I wore that wire ring until the day he died. Still have it in my jewelry box. What are you saying? I'm saying the dress doesn't make the marriage. The love does. Ruth cupped Clara's face. But you deserve beautiful things, baby. Always have. So you make that dress as fancy as you want, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Clara worked on the dress between other projects, the Morrison wedding gown she'd promised, repairs for customers who'd stuck with her through everything, new commissions from people who'd seen her stand up in court and decided she was worth trusting. The shop came together piece by piece. Walls went up, windows went in. A new sign was hung above the door. Prescott and Blackwood, fine dressmaking. Blackwood? Silas raised an eyebrow when he saw it. We're not married yet. We will be, Clara grinned at him. Consider it motivation. Woman, I don't need motivation. I need you to pick a date so I can stop worrying you'll change your mind. September 15th. Silas went still. That's 3 weeks away.
I know.
Clara stepped closer, took his hands.
I've wasted enough time being afraid. I don't want to waste any more.
Are you sure? That's not much time to plan.
I don't need a big wedding. I need you.
She rose on tiptoe, pressed a kiss to his jaw.
September 15th, the meadow behind your cabin. Just us, my mother, and whoever wants to make the ride up.
Something cracked open in Silas's expression. Wonder. Gratitude. Love so fierce it almost hurt to look at. September 15th, he repeated. I'll be there. You better be. Word spread fast through Copper Creek. The fat seamstress was marrying the mountain hermit. Reactions ranged from genuine happiness to bitter jealousy to frank disbelief. She actually thinks he'll go through with it? Clara overheard Martha Price whispering at the mercantile. Mark my words, he'll disappear back into those mountains before the ceremony. Clara didn't respond, didn't need to. She knew what she had with Silas, knew it in her bones, in her blood, in every breath she took. The doubters could think whatever they wanted. 2 weeks before the wedding, Clara finished the Morrison dress and delivered it to Jenny Morrison herself. The girl gasped when she saw it, tears streaming down her face.
It's more beautiful than I imagined. After the fire, I thought...
I made you a promise. Clara helped her try it on, adjusting the bodice, smoothing the skirt. I keep my promises.
How can I ever thank you?
Be happy. That's all the thanks I need. Jenny hugged her fiercely.
You deserve to be happy too, Miss Prescott. More than anyone.
Clara carried those words with her all the way home. 1 week before the wedding, Silas asked her to come to the ranch. There's something I need to show you, he said, his expression unreadable. Something I should have shown you before. They rode up together, following the familiar trail through the foothills. But instead of going to the cabin, Silas led her to the meadow where Abigail and Rosie were buried.
Silas, what?
I rebuilt the markers. His voice was rough. After the fire, while you were recovering. I came up here and rebuilt them, and I added something. Clara dismounted, walked toward the graves she'd visited once before. The stone cairns were the same, but between them stood a new wooden cross, carved with words she had to kneel to read. In memory of Abigail and Rosie Blackwood, beloved wife and daughter, and in celebration of Clara Ruth Prescott, who brought their father back to life. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. I talked to them, Silas said, kneeling beside her. Told them about you, about us, about how I'm finally ready to stop punishing myself for surviving. His voice broke. I asked their permission to be happy again. And I could have sworn I heard Rosie laughing. Tears tracked down his weathered face. She had this laugh, like bells, like water over stones. I hadn't heard it in 20 years, but I heard it that day. Clara pulled him into her arms, held him while he shook with sobs he'd been holding back for 2 decades.
They'd want you to be happy, she whispered. They'd want you to live.
I know. He pulled back, wiped his face. I finally know. And I wanted you to see this, to understand that you're not replacing them, you're adding to them, becoming part of a family that started long before we met.
I'm honored.
Clara touched the wooden cross, traced the letters of her name.
To be part of their story, to be part of yours.
You're not part of my story. Silas took her face in his hands. You are my story, the next chapter, the one I never thought I'd get to write. They stayed in the meadow until sunset, talking to the graves, sharing memories Silas had never spoken aloud. Clara learned about Abigail's terrible cooking and beautiful singing voice, about Rosie's obsession with collecting feathers, about the life that had been cut short, and the life that was finally beginning again. When they rode back to town, something had shifted between them. Deeper, more permanent. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 3 days before the wedding, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She'd been feeling strange for weeks, tired, queasy, emotional in ways that didn't make sense. She'd blamed the stress of rebuilding, the trial, the wedding preparations. But when she missed her monthly for the second time, she finally admitted the truth. "Mama?" Clara found Ruth in the kitchen, her voice shaking. "I need to tell you something." Ruth took one look at her daughter's face and set down her coffee cup. "You're pregnant." "How did you—" "I'm your mother. I've been watching you turn green at the smell of bacon for 2 weeks." Ruth's face creased with emotion. "Oh, baby. Does Silas know?" "Not yet. I just figured it out myself." "How do you feel?" Clara sank into a chair, her hands pressed to her stomach. "Terrified. Happy. Confused." She looked up at her mother. "Is it possible to feel all those things at once?" "It's the only way to feel when you're bringing new life into the world." Ruth moved to sit beside her, took her hands. "This is a blessing, Clara. A miracle." "What if Silas—" "That man will be over the moon. You know that." "But it's so fast. We're not even married yet. People will talk." "People have been talking about you your whole life. Has it ever stopped you from living?" Clara thought about that. About all the years she'd spent hiding, shrinking, trying to be invisible. About how much had changed since Silas walked into her life. "No," she said finally. "It hasn't." "Then don't let it start now." Ruth squeezed her hands. "Tell him tonight. Let him share this joy with you." Clara found Silas at the construction site, hammering nails into what would be the shop's new counter. She watched him work for a moment, this man who'd come down from a mountain to save her, who'd stood by her through fire and trial and rebuilding. "Silas." He looked up, smiled that rare smile that transformed his whole face. "Hey, thought you were working on your dress." "I was. I needed a break." Clara crossed to him, took the hammer from his hands. "I need to tell you something." His expression shifted to concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Clara took a breath. "Everything's right. More right than it's ever been." "Clara, you're scaring me." "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air. Silas went absolutely still. "What?" "I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby." The hammer clattered to the floor. Silas stared at her, his face cycling through emotions too fast to name. Shock, fear, wonder, joy, terror, hope. "A baby," he whispered. "Yes." "Our baby." "Yes." "Clara." His voice cracked. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Something shattered in Silas's expression. He dropped to his knees right there on the sawdust-covered floor, wrapped his arms around her waist, pressed his face to her stomach. "Hello," he said, his voice muffled against her dress. "Hello, little one. I'm your father. And I promise I will never let anything happen to you." Clara's tears fell freely, landing in his graying hair. "Silas." "I'm going to be a father again." He looked up at her, his face wet. "I never thought, after everything, I never thought I'd get another chance." "You did. We did." Clara knelt beside him, cupped his face. "This baby is going to have the best father in the world." A father who knows what loss feels like, who will treasure every moment because he understands how precious they are. "What if I fail? What if something happens and I can't?" "Then we'll face it together, whatever comes." Clara kissed him, tasting salt tears and sawdust and hope.
But I don't think you'll fail. I think you'll be amazing. How can you be so sure? Because you already are.
She pressed her forehead to his.
You saved me, Silas Blackwood. Now let's save each other.
They held each other on the floor of the half-built shop, two people who'd spent years believing they didn't deserve happiness, choosing to claim it anyway. The wedding day dawned clear and golden. Clara woke before sunrise, her wedding dress hanging by the window, catching the first light. White silk with pearl buttons. A train that would catch the light. Sleeves that made her arms look exactly as they were. Strong, capable, beautiful in their own way.
You ready?
Ruth appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her best.
I've been ready my whole life.
Clara stood, let her mother help her into the dress she'd designed as a young girl and finally made real.
I just didn't know it until now. You're beautiful.
Ruth's voice broke.
So beautiful. Mama, don't cry. You'll make me cry. Then we'll both cry.
Ruth laughed through her tears.
That's what weddings are for.
They made the ride up to Silas's ranch together. Clara on a white mare Silas had brought down special. Ruth and the small wedding party following behind. Sheriff Walker had come, and the Bakers, and Mrs. Chen, and a handful of others who'd stood with them when it mattered. The meadow where Abigail and Rosie were buried had been transformed. Wildflowers everywhere, ribbons in the trees, a simple wooden arch where Silas stood waiting with the traveling minister who'd ridden in from Cheyenne. Clara's breath caught when she saw him. Silas had dressed in a dark suit she'd never seen before, his hair trimmed, his face clean-shaven for the first time since she'd known him. He looked younger, softer, hopeful in a way that made her heart ache. Their eyes met across the meadow, and everything else fell away. Ruth walked her to the arch, pressed a kiss to her cheek, stepped aside. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, but Clara barely heard him. She was looking at Silas, at the tears tracking down his face, at the love so visible it was almost painful to witness. "I believe you've written your own vows?" the minister prompted. Silas nodded, took Clara's hands. 23 years ago, I buried my heart in this meadow alongside my wife and daughter. I thought it was gone forever, that I'd never feel anything again except guilt and grief and the slow suffocation of existing without really living. His voice roughened. Then I saw a woman fall in the street, saw the whole town laugh at her, and something in me woke up. Something that had been dead so long I'd forgotten it existed. He squeezed her hands. "Clara Ruth Prescott, you didn't just save me. You resurrected me. You showed me that second chances are real, that love doesn't die just because we're afraid of it, that two broken people can build something whole together." I don't have fancy words, don't have poetry or promises of wealth or easy living. What I have is this. I will wake up every morning choosing you. I will fight for you, stand with you, hold you when the world gets hard. I will love you with everything I have and everything I am for as long as I draw breath. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. And I will love our child the same way. I swear it. Clara's tears fell freely now. "My turn?" she managed. Silas nodded. "When I was 19, a man taught me that love was a weapon, that hope was dangerous, that women like me, fat, plain, invisible, weren't allowed to want beautiful things." Clara's voice steadied as she spoke. "I believed him for 10 years, built walls so high I couldn't see over them, told myself I was safe when I was really just dying slowly." She looked at the graves behind them, at Abigail and Rosie's final resting place. "Then you came down from your mountain and saw me, really saw me,
Not the parts the town found lacking, but all of me. The fear and the strength, the hope and the scars. The woman who'd been waiting her whole life for someone to think she was worth fighting for. Clara stepped closer, close enough to feel his heartbeat through their joined hands. Silas Cooper Blackwood, you didn't rescue me. You showed me I was capable of rescuing myself. You stood beside me while I found my voice, my courage, my right to take up space in this world. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to be anything except exactly who you are. Broken, healing, learning to live again alongside me. Her voice broke on the last words. I choose you. Today, tomorrow, every day for the rest of our lives. I choose us and the family we're building and the future we're creating from the ashes of everything we lost. The minister cleared his throat. Do you, Silas Cooper Blackwood, take this woman? I do. Silas didn't wait for the full question. I do. Laughter rippled through the small crowd. And do you, Clara Ruth Prescott? Yes. Clara was laughing and crying at once. Forever yes. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. The minister smiled. You may kiss your bride. Silas pulled her into his arms and kissed her like the world was ending, like they were the only two people alive, like everything he'd ever lost had led to this moment of finding. The crowd cheered. Ruth wept openly. Somewhere, Clara could have sworn she heard a child's laughter, like bells, like water over stones. They celebrated in the meadow until sunset, sharing food and stories and hope. Clara caught Silas standing by the graves at one point, his hand on the smaller marker, his lips moving silently. She joined him, slipped her hand into his. What did you tell her? That she has a little brother or sister on the way. Silas's voice was thick. That I'll make sure they know about her, about both of them. That they're part of our family, even though they're gone. They are. Clara leaned against him. They always will be. They spent their wedding night in the cabin, in the home Silas had built for isolation, that was now becoming something else entirely. A place for a family. A place for hope. When Clara woke the next morning, Silas was already up, standing at the window, watching the sunrise over the mountains. Hey, she joined him, wrapped in a quilt. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about the future. He pulled her against his side, thinking about how different it looks now than it did a year ago, a month ago, even a week ago. Good different? The best different. He kissed the top of her head. I spent 20 years waiting to die. Now I'm finally ready to live. The months that followed transformed both their lives. Clara's shop flourished. Word spread about the seamstress who'd stood